The rain hammered against the windows of the San Diego Community Center that stormy night in March 2011. Inside, however, no one seemed to notice the weather. Every eye, every raised voice, was locked onto the heated debate over a new dog park proposal, and the third row sat Jessica Thornfield, her auburn hair glinting beneath the bright fluorescent lights. At just 28, she had already become the kind of veterinarian people whispered about with admiration. The one who would rush out at midnight to save a dying kitten. The one who took home every stray because no one else would. Leaning forward in her chair, Jessica spoke with steady conviction, arguing for better animal care facilities in their quiet Claremont Mesa neighborhood. Her green eyes flashed with purpose as she addressed the council, her voice rising above the frustrated muttering of local business owners worried about tax increases. If you're watching tonight, tell us where you're tuning in from. We love hearing from our true crime family around the world. The meeting crawled past 9:30 p.m., much later than anyone predicted. When Jessica checked her phone, she found a message from her husband, Michael, asking whether she needed a ride. She typed back quickly, "Almost done. Walking home. Love you." Outside, the March storm had grown fiercer. The normally calm streets of Claremont Mesa were now rushing streams, water swirling along the curbs. The parking lot was nearly empty by the time Jessica stepped into the rain, pulling her light jacket tight around her shoulders. Security footage later confirmed her final moments at the center, her veterinary bag over her shoulder, her stride confident, completely unaware that someone was watching her from the shadows near the dumpsters. Around 10:15 p.m., Elena Patterson, a woman who lived across from the community center, told police she heard a car door slam, then the screech of tires against wet asphalt. But in a neighborhood where people minded their own business, no one looked outside. By morning, the consequences of that silence were beginning to unfold. At Gentle Paws Veterinary Clinic, the staff knew something was wrong the moment they arrived. Jessica was never late. Not once. Dr. Amanda Walsh, her business partner, stood alone in the quiet clinic at 7 a.m. Her eyes drifted across Jessica's overflowing appointment book, a golden retriever needing hip surgery, a cat scheduled for dental work, a rabbit waiting for a tumor removal, patients who depended on her, owners who trusted her, all waiting for a woman who never walked through the door. 3 days passed. No leads, no sightings, no answers. Meanwhile, Michael Thornfield, exhausted, unshaven, and barely able to speak, covered telephone poles and storefronts with missing person flyers. Jessica's smile stared back from every wall, the same gentle smile that had put nervous pets and anxious owners at ease for years. Missing. Jessica Thornfield, age 28. Last seen March 15th. For Michael, the words felt unreal, like reading a nightmare written about someone else's life. The first break came unexpectedly. Mrs. Chen, the elderly owner of Lucky's Chinese restaurant, had gone out back to throw away the trash when something shiny caught her eye. Against the wall behind Gentle Paws, half buried under soaked leaves, was a set of keys, attached to a tiny stuffed dog keychain. A little brown plush puppy Jessica had carried since veterinary school. Mrs. Chun knew instantly whose they were. Detective Patricia Coleman arrived within minutes. She studied the keys closely. No bent metal. No torn fabric. No blood. Nothing that suggested a struggle or sudden fall. Instead, they looked placed, as though someone had set them there intentionally. Too tidy for panic. Too obvious for a cover-up. Coleman slipped them into an evidence bag herself. The faint smell of Jessica's vanilla perfume still clung to the key, installed only months earlier, had malfunctioned during the storm. The lens was fogged, useless. The only thing it recorded was the moment it shut down. 11:47 p.m., March 15th. Nearly 2 hours after Jessica left the community center meeting. Standing beside Coleman, Dr. Walsh stared at the evidence, her hands shaking. She never used the back entrance at night, ever, Walsh whispered. Jessica was careful, especially during storms. She wouldn't come here alone after dark. The implication was heavy, unspoken, and terrifying. The San Diego Police Department had handled many missing person cases. But from the start, Something about Jessica's disappearance felt different. Wrong. Back at her desk, Detective Coleman sifted through timelines and witness statements. At 42, she'd seen enough cases disguised as something they weren't to approach every disappearance with skepticism. But this case didn't fit any pattern. No domestic motive. No sudden financial trouble. No double life. Nothing. When Michael sat across from her in the interview room, his fingers intertwined until the knuckles went white. Every detail he shared matched phone records. He graded papers until he got her message. He fell asleep waiting for her. He woke around midnight to an empty bed. He called her phone again and again. His story had no cracks. The clinic staff described Jessica the same way. Dedicated, passionate, dependable. Dr. Walsh mentioned their plans to expand emergency services. Maybe even start a mobile veterinary unit for elderly pet owners. She had dreams? Detective? Walsh said softly. Big dreams. The receptionist, Maria Santos, added something else. Jessica had recently complained about odd phone calls. Someone repeatedly asking about after-hour services but never booking an appointment. Then came an interview that made Coleman pause. Harold Brennan, the clinic's maintenance worker. 18 months on the job. During questioning, he seemed rehearsed. His timeline was too detailed, specific shows. He claimed to have watched commercial breaks he remembered, minute-by-minute accounts that felt memorized rather than lived. Coleman wrote it all down. Carefully, but the real breakthrough came from technology no one expected. 3 blocks from the community center sat Tommy's Electronics, a tiny repair shop with a newly installed security camera system. The owner, Tommy Nguyen, had forgotten to mention it during the initial canvassing. When Detective James Mitchell returned for a second round of interviews, Nguyen casually brought up the cameras, apologizing for not thinking of them sooner. The footage was grainy, typical for 2011. But what it showed stopped the investigation cold. At 10:23 p.m., March 15th, the camera captured Jessica walking past the shop. Her red jacket stood out even in the pixelated image. She moved quickly, her bag bouncing at her side. A lone silhouette trailed Jessica from a careful distance. The timestamp showed the figure mirroring her movements with eerie precision, slowing when she slowed, speeding up when she quickened her pace. The poor lighting hid the person's face, but their intent was unmistakable. Detective Mitchell attempted to enhance the footage with the department's outdated software, hoping for clarity. Instead, the details only grew more unsettling. Whoever followed Jessica seemed to know exactly where the cameras in the neighborhood were, and how to avoid them. They navigated the shadows with practiced confidence, slipping through blind spots as though they'd mapped them out in advance. Even more disturbing, the follower appeared to anticipate Jessica's route. They didn't just follow, they predicted, as if they knew her habits intimately or had been surveilling her far longer than anyone realized. The video ended just as the pair moved out of frame, heading toward Jessica's quiet residential block, the final stretch she never completed. This new evidence unraveled several assumptions investigators had made early on. If Jessica was being stalked from the community center meeting, then this wasn't a random encounter. It was premeditated, deliberate. Coleman cross-checked the timeline with cell tower records. Jessica's phone pinged a tower near her home at 10:31 p.m., just 8 minutes after the last camera sighting. Then the signal vanished. Either the phone was powered off or destroyed. Somewhere in that narrow window, between the electronics shop and her front porch, Jessica Thornfield disappeared, and someone had been waiting for the exact moment to strike. By September 2011, 6 months after Jessica vanished. The investigation had shrunk to a single detective rechecking leads that grew colder by the week. Detective Coleman kept Jessica's case file permanently on her desk, a constant shadow tugging at her thoughts. The department had done everything procedure allowed. Searched abandoned structures, drained reservoirs, interviewed hundreds of residents, and chased every reported sighting stretching from Los Angeles to Tijuana. Still, nothing broke the silence. Media attention faded. Headlines shifted to fresh tragedies. And in November, the case was officially labeled cold, filed away among dozens of other unresolved disappearances filling a corner of Coleman's crowded office. But for Jessica's family, cold meant nothing. Michael, barely functioning, took a leave from teaching. Day after day, he drove across Southern California, putting up new flyers as the old ones weathered and tore. Truck stops, gas stations, motel lobbies. He existed in a painful limbo, still married to a woman who might never return, yet unable to accept a future without her. Jessica's mother, Margaret Thornfield, refused to let the public forget her daughter. She organized community searches every weekend, worked with Missing Persons Network statewide, and built a website documenting every tip, timeline entry, and possible lead. Her living room in Escondido transformed into a command center, maps plastered across the walls. Red.